Running a business is unpredictable, but with the right insurance, you can face the unexpected with confidence. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we protect what matters most: your people, your property, and your future. Whether it's liability, property, or workers' comp, we tailor coverage to fit your business needs. Because when you're covered, you can focus on what really matters: growing your business. Call us today for a free quote at 1-855-887-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com. Northwest Insurance Agency, protection that works as hard as you do.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let we go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. Got a lot to get to on today's show as, look, SMU does have a new women's basketball coach, Adia Barnes, getting hired away from Arizona. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. We're going to talk about resetting the transfer portal for the men's basketball side of things, as well as Andy Enfield and his staff also await the end of the dead period later this week. But on the Pony Express podcast presented by Northwest Insurance Agency, we're going to talk a lot about SMU spring football, and we'll do some recruiting as well. So let's dive on in here on this Tuesday. Appreciate you guys following along with us. SMU football is in a little bit of a pause right now as they because they started after spring break, they wanted to kind of give the guys a couple days. They wanted to also sit down and have some conversations with players ahead of the transfer portal window opening, is my guess. And it does open April 15th, I believe, is that day for football in the spring portal window. And so Rhett Lashley and his staff getting a chance to, April 16th is what I've got, they're getting a chance to assess after what has been, I believe, 8 practices. So a really quick run of spring ball for SMU because of that change from, starting it before spring break, kind of having a split spring ball. They're kind of going fast and furious ahead of that April 25th private spring scrimmage, which is open to ticket holders and other dignitaries, so to speak, of SMU. So if you have your season tickets, you should be able to attend. Just reach out to them. If you didn't get the email, I've seen one email go out already about the private spring game format kind of deal that they're doing. Spring game, spring practice, spring scrimmage, however you want to call it. SMU's final spring showcase, April 25th, the evening, that Friday night, they'll do it. But they want to be able to go into the second half of spring ball with clarity on where their roster might stand, where they're going to maybe have to address in that spring transfer portal window. So I kind of like this little mini break that they've included in there. Of course, the players are working out with Sean Griswold, getting after it in the weight room a little bit, and continuing to, develop in the strength side of things, and probably get some treatment too for some guys with some bumps and bruises. But that is the big kind of break right now for SMU football, as they're settling in and preparing for that transfer portal window, and also mainly preparing for where they're going to go after players. But I wanted to take this podcast and really run down some thoughts on some transfer standouts for SMU so far. So on theponyexpress.com, you can subscribe for just $1. A lot of you have. You can read the full story, but I wanted to kind of cherry pick on the podcast side of things, not only some takeaways on some transfers, but also the handful or so, maybe a little less, of the ones that actually have stood out so far to me in spring practice. So we're going to kind of run down that group. But at ontheponyexpress.com, we have the breakdown of every single transfer, how they look, what they're bringing to the table, maybe an early idea of the role that they're going to play. But that is for our subscribers on there. So make sure you check that out as well. But let's jump in here. And the first transfer that I want to profile, and everybody always asks about this position with Calvin Thibodeau, but I am actually going to highlight Terry Webb, the Texas State transfer who came to SMU with the chance to really, I think, elevate his draft stock, being a group of 5 transfer. You could see what Calvin Thibodeau and his staff and the rest of the staff really liked about Terry Webb. And Calvin Thibodeau just described him as twitchy and powerful before the spring. And I think that's been a perfect description of him because he's not the tallest guy like Jeffrey Emba, who's been awesome in his own right. The former Purdue transfer has been great, but Terry Webb, I think, came in with a little less fanfare because he's from Texas State and just didn't really get that amount of respect that I think Jeffrey Emba, who's a former number one JUCO defensive lineman in the country, got when he transferred. But Terry has come in and been really, really impressive to me. I mean, he's been able to win some quality one-on-ones. He's been able to really do, I think, the things that, SMU needs him to. They have Jeffrey Emba, who's a big body. They have some other pieces in there. But I just think Terry Webb has the chance to maybe be like Jared Harrison Hunt in a sense. I still kind of think Jared is, from a talent perspective, maybe just a step above. But I think some of the tools and the quickness that you see from Terry out there on the field that make him someone that could really raise his draft stock into an NFL defensive lineman this year is evident in practice. And because we've seen Jonathan Jefferson get nicked up in practice, he was observing practice on Saturday, you're seeing somebody who's getting even more reps and allowed to get comfortable in the defense because of that a little bit quicker. And then in one-on-ones, you see him be able to, make a swim move and beat an opposing offensive lineman. He and Addison Nichols, the center for SMU football this year now, the Arkansas transfer, really had some nice battles. Both have gotten the better of each other here and there, but Terry has been able to show, I think, that elite quickness and really lateral movement skills that you should be excited about if you're an SMU fan. And I know Calvin Thibodeau and the staff, they want these guys to get vertical. They don't want them to read, react, and go side to side or whatever. But you see it in the one-on-ones where if they let these guys loose and pass rush situations, why Terry Webb can certainly be left out there to rush the passer. Last year in 10 starts, 13 games overall, 19 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and a quarterback hurry. He's going to have to step up that level of production in a way. But if SMU hits on the athlete, and it looks like they have hit on it, on the athletic piece of it, I expect him to be somebody who is a very solid contributor. His spring has shown that he will be at that level that SMU needs him to be. So I think a really nice pickup in Terry Webb so far. And that's kind of what you want. Another position that is always talked about is, of course, the offensive line. And Addison Nichols, I mentioned him. He's really had a nice, a really nice just run, as the center. I think getting comfortable, getting to the point where he can make the calls, he can get the playbook down really quickly. I think that stands out to me. And he's been able to show his size is not like he's a big kid, but he really understands leverage and he understands technique very well. I think watching one-on-ones, and it's kind of tough for offensive linemen, I feel like, in these drills from time to time, because you really see the defensive lineman be able to take advantage of not having to worry about scheme or not having to worry about if there's a play action, they could just go and get it. But Addison Nichols does a really nice job of anchoring. And Garen Justice, they do a lot of drills, if you've ever been out at practice or whatnot, where you see these guys and they're locked up, they're locked in with the opposing offensive lineman who's playing the part of the defensive lineman, and all they do is they reset their feet. And Hayden obviously can talk a lot more about it, but what it allows what allows these offensive linemen to do is really train themselves that, okay, I might get pushed back, but I've got to re-anchor. And I think we've seen Addison, come in right away and be very comfortable doing all of those things. So SMU has hit on the center position. They've hit on defensive tackle. Another position that, of course, we've got to talk about is the running back room. And SMU running backs are being viewed as a very big question mark going into this season. You haven't seen LJ Johnson out there in a minute. Jalen Knight and Kamar Wheaton no longer with the program. You have Chris Johnson Jr. and you have Derek McFall taking all of the reps. Kyle Cooper, Tyler Foster managing this room. All of a sudden, they only have two scholarship guys in spring. And then Jermico Green comes in. I got to believe they're going to add somebody in the transfer portal at the running back room just to shore things up. I mean, you've got to do it just from a numbers perspective. But both of them have been, really terrific in their own ways. Chris Johnson Jr., I think, is getting more comfortable running the football the way they want him to. We've seen multiple flashes of big, long runs, explosive plays, being able to hit the big one. But at the same time, he's still learning maybe how to read the holes, how to kind of sit back and be patient just a little bit. There's a couple moments where we've seen him kind of running to like a hole, and it's kind of closed down a little bit, and then he kind of gets a little maybe unsure or maybe tentative, I guess, because he's unsure of what to do, and the coaching staff is just kind of saying, go vertical, keep moving your feet. And so it's just one of those things where I think as he gets more comfortable in the system, maybe that'll slow down just a little bit. But what is apparent is when the hole is there and he hits it, he can really get going fast. So I think he's been probably somebody that out of all of the players, I feel like we've really seen him be quite the surprise, in a sense, because Bouchard had some incredible intangibles in terms of reading the kick return and kind of having vision and all of that right off the bat. Whereas Chris Johnson Jr. was kind of viewed as somebody who had a ton of speed, was not the lateral agility guy that Brashard Smith had, but has the world-class speed to be somebody and to be a really good back for SMU if it hits. And there just wasn't much fanfare. And of course, you're not trying to put the pressure on him to be Brashard Smith when he gets to SMU, or that he has to, live up to that level of production and that level of expectation. And that's where I think it's allowed him to kind of just be himself. And I was talking with somebody the other day. He has fit in so well from the culture, and he's just kind of locked in on that. And it's kind of interesting, I think, now, because yes, SMU had Elijah Roberts, Jared Harrison Hunt, Jafari Harvey, Keyshawn Smith, Brashard Smith, and a couple others, on this team that came over from Miami, have adjusted well to the culture, and they built the culture up. And there's still some guys that are coming in now, like a Zion Nelson as well. You have, Romello Brinson, who's back, but you never know how it's going to change as, that large group of Miami guys who've worked out so well maybe aren't around anymore, or just point blank aren't around anymore. Like, how are those guys going to adjust? And from everything I've gathered, Chris Johnson Jr. has just nailed it when it comes to, fitting into that running back room and really being somebody that I think understands and locks in with the team really, really well. So there's a lot of excitement about him and what he brings to the table. Before we continue on with our transfer standouts, do want to remind you guys that we're also presented by our friends at My Perfect Franchise, myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludicky, he can hook you up with a complete overview of how to do franchise, ownership and how it can work for you, and whether there's a brick and mortar franchise opportunity that you want to check out, or whether it's maybe a little bit more mobile and fits a different lifestyle for you. He can help you find that franchise. And if you do work with Andy Ludicky on a franchise, and you sign an agreement with him, his services, his consulting is free. But if you sign an agreement on a franchise and jump into that world of franchise ownership, he'll donate money back to SMU's NIL collective. So it's worth having the conversation. If it works out, then you'll be able to, say you helped out SMU's collectives as well with the work that myperfectfranchise.net is doing. You can give them a call, 404-973-9901, or email them Andy, A-N-D-Y, at myperfectfranchise.net. We actually had a subscriber reach out to me this week, and so we got them hooked up. So a lot of people are at least having the conversation with Andy. Again, he's friends with the Uters, who were just in town for spring practice to watch Graham, and Miles will be back, I'm sure, at some point to check out. And of course, he'll get on campus this summer as a 2025 addition to the class. But overall, Andy Ludicky just really helping out our friends and making sure that they understand what they're getting into, and that you can do it and change your life and get out of the corporate rat race. So we appreciate our friend Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net. All right. Continuing on with some of the spring transfer standouts and just overall storylines too. I do want to touch on some other ones. We don't have to make it all sunshine and rainbows, but two players that are still coming back from injuries that they've suffered in the past, and they're kind of on two different spectrums here. But we go back to the trenches. Zion Nelson, the offensive tackle from Miami, DeMarge Lewis, the transfer defensive lineman from Purdue. I thought it was really interesting. We'll start with DeMarge, but DeMarge Lewis has been injured, I would say, most of his career. He's in a red jersey in practice. He really hasn't done much. We haven't seen him do anything, truthfully. But what he has done is he's continuously been talked up by Calvin Thibodeau, by Jeffrey Embody, who's former Purdue teammate. And Jeffrey, if you watch the interview on our YouTube channel, one, it's incredible because Jeffrey Embody Jeffrey Embay is from France, so you get the accent too. So, but DeMarge Lewis really, I think, looks the part of somebody that if SMU can just get him healthy to this fall, and they haven't really disclosed what he's been coming back from, but he's not really done much in spring. So that's kind of the flip side of it, where you have somebody like Terry Webb and Jeffrey Embody are doing really well. DeMarge Lewis hasn't been able to work out with them in the spring. He is recovering from previous injury, so it's not something like he did it on the first day or anything like that. But it's why I do think they've got to address the defensive line and the transfer portal one more time. At least get another big defensive tackle and see what you can get. And it's going to be crazy because if you've been following college football, there was no settlement formalized on Monday, which was kind of the thought that maybe they would finalize what the house settlement looks like and some of the rules and things like that. But they did not, unfortunately. So they're going to be jumping into figure out some of those things with the attorneys and just kind of how they want to do certain things. But that could lead to a more wild transfer portal window this spring as programs try to get some major contracts through before they see their true cap situation get put into focus. So SMU is kind of hoping that might not be the case, and they'll be able to ride out what they kind of have going and maybe get just maybe the market will be just a touch calmer, and they'll be able to get more bang for their buck. So that'll be something worth watching for sure as we go through the spring portal window. Is how does the market impact what SMU can do from a defensive tackle perspective? Because DeMarge Lewis has been hurt, so they would like to get a little bit more insurance there. And then if Zion Nelson, he's actually come in and looked, I would say serviceable in practice. And he's coming back from basically like multiple knee surgeries. It's clear. I mean, whatever they did at Miami, just did not go well. And so he's been going through the process of, I think, just trying to get back into shape. And because they don't want to rush him, like that's the biggest thing Garen Justice shared with me, is that, they know what Zion Nelson, who was projected as an early round pick earlier in his college career before injuries kind of derailed it. But I mean, they know what they have in Zion Nelson. He's a big guy on the edge. He's been playing right tackle. Basically, as of right now, they've at least left Savion Byrd at left tackle. PJ Williams has very firm control on the right tackle job. But what they've done is they've really let Andrew Chamblee and they've let Zion Nelson play on the right side. And I think in part because they know that Draymond Odoms is going to come in and be a left tackle. He's going to be a quote unquote franchise left tackle. That's what they're betting on. And if anyone is going to take away the left tackle job from Savion Byrd, SMU is going to have it be Draymond Odoms, barring something crazy. And I respect that SMU is now getting to this point where they're recruiting at that level that they can do that. And they can bet on them, and they know certain players like a Jalen Cooper, Dalen Singleton. We're kind of getting off on a tangent here on some of this other spring stuff, but Jalen Cooper, Dalen Singleton, they love them. They're very high on them. They think those guys can play a lot and play early as a freshman. Well, you're getting to the point where you're recruiting players that are good enough to do that. That's a good thing. That's where SMU now, as you evaluate high school classes for SMU, you can kind of see that be a little bit more of a focal point as far as evaluation, because Rhett's first year here, they were in the AAC. They finished out the class, whatever, they signed some holdovers, things like that. And then the next cycle, if I'm having this right, then the next cycle, first full cycle under Rhett Lashley, they sign their class, and then they find out they're going to the ACC. Then they go win the AAC, and you're signing a class of largely transfer portal players with some high school players. And that's your second full cycle, if I'm doing the math right. But because you found out you're going to the ACC that fall, you kind of stopped recruiting the high school ranks and you went transfer portal. Then this year is finally their first full recruiting class that really should be judged for the ACC. And they've got Jalen Cooper, Dalen Singleton, Jermichael Green, Draymond Odoms, guys like that offensively they feel like they could play right away. So in terms of the transfer takeaways, Zion Nelson has been at right tackle because you've recruited so well that you feel like you're 5-star, by one service and a consensus top 100 guy. Left tackle Draymond Odoms can come in and play that position that well. Zion Nelson is allowed to develop. You have PJ Williams. You can play Zion Nelson as long as he's healthy and kind of help that right side. And right guard is still very much up for grabs. So that'll be a really interesting position to watch as we move forward. But Zion Nelson hasn't looked good enough to flip him over to the left side and deal with all of the pressure that a left tackle is going to face. And so that's something to keep an eye on there. Now, do you want to also mention our friends at Thomas Auto Group? Appreciate their support of the podcast. Thomas Auto Group, make sure you hit up 75 McKinney, find out about the Thomas Promise. Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen dealerships, they also have pre-owned and used lots. Of course, you can get employee pricing on new and pre-owned cars. When you mention on the Pony Express, they also have a service department that is outstanding. So make sure you check them out, the Thomas Auto Group, and find out more about the Thomas Promise today.
At Thomas Auto Group, the Thomas Promise includes the low price promise,
the pre-owned promise,
and the 72-hour exchange promise.
And finally, the 100% customer satisfaction promise. So shop Thomas Auto Group today, home of the Thomas Promise.
All right. Do you want to just dish out a couple more tidbits on some transfers? And it's funny, we kind of have worked through some of them here, but one other I do want to talk about is DJ Warner. And it's because I think he has such a bright future. I mean, he really has the speed off the edge that we've not seen at SMU in my days covering it. I mean, truthfully, it really is And maybe it's because he is a little lean and he kind of looks like he should be maybe playing like a big wide receiver, a big tight end, because he's cut up, but he just has an absolute first step and speed off the edge that is undeniable, that is going to be special to watch as his career unfolds. You know, if he keeps everything in line off field, if he picks up a playbook, adds some weight, he could end up being the crown jewel of this transfer portal class for 2025 for SMU. I mean, not only does he have 3 years left to play, you know, he's got all the tools to be successful at a very high level, and they were able to, you know, recruit him hard and get him across the finish line. So that one, I did want to do one more shout out because DJ Warner has just shown up and shown out with his speed. I think he's still learning the defense, still learning how to practice, do things like that. I don't want to assign blame, but I think he got close to a quarterback the other day, for example, and he kind of got put in check a little bit. But anyway, DJ Warner's been a big standout as well. All right. Do also want to remind you guys, check out StatusJet, statusjet.com. Appreciate their support of the On the Pony Express podcast. Get a discount on a round trip flight when you mention On the Pony Express or our discount code PonyUpACC. Check them out. Big plane, small plane, helicopter, family trip, work clients. They can do it all. There's no membership fee either. So check out StatusJet. See if it's right for you. They have incredible attention to detail, and we appreciate their support of the On the Pony Express podcast. Let's flip over to hoops. A couple more minutes here on this. And SMU women's basketball did make a hire. Adia Barnes, a Arizona alum who coached her alma mater to a Final Four appearance, national championship game appearance, is on the move, and SMU hired her as the replacement for Toya Wilson. And since then, 8 new transfers and 8 new faces for this SMU program have come into the fold. 2 high school additions, 6 transfers. Penn State transfer Grace Hall, Tulsa transfer Elise Hall, Stanford transfer Zanaya Harriel from Stanford. They're in, and then she brought 3 players, Maylene Rolfe, Paulina Paris, and Sanaya Ja have committed to SMU, and then 2 high school additions, Roxy White from Frankfort, Illinois, and then Jazzy Gibson, who played at Duncanville. She's from Albuquerque originally. She was a move-in, but those are the 2 high school additions that SMU's brought in as well. They were both signed to play for Coach Barnes at Arizona. She gets introduced Wednesday afternoon. Damon Evans, his first day on the job was Monday, and technically, and before he even had his first day on the job, he had a hire made for SMU women's basketball. So, look, I have truthfully no idea how all of this is going to pan out from a roster construction perspective. I have no idea in terms of scouting these players and what to tell you. I can and will run you down their points per game when the transfers, and then just kind of some of the accolades of the 2 high school additions. But I mean, it's clear it's been there's been a little bit of an exodus, of course, from SMU's perspective with the change from Toya Wilson. But Grace Hall averaged 5.7 points per game. I believe, I'm pretty sure she's a guard. Elise Hall averaged 10.9 points, 2.9 rebounds for Tulsa this year. She's a forward, I believe. I could be wrong. Zanaya Harriel averaged 5.1 points per game for Stanford this year. And then Rolfe averaged 3.2 points per game as a true freshman this year. Ja averaged 6.6 points, 2.9 rebounds per game for Arizona this year. And then Paris appeared in every game. She's the only Arizona player to do that, starting in 24 while averaging 8.3 points, 2.9 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 steals per game. So Paulina Paris is probably expected to be, I would say, one of the top players out of that portal haul. And then Roxy White, here's what Adia Barnes said this fall about her when she brought her in. Fierce competitor who brings strength, toughness, incredible versatility to the court, excels at multiple positions, and she's got that dog mentality and plays with a chip on her shoulder. And then with Jazzy, Jasmine Gibson from Duncanville, goes by Jazzy, and she brings athleticism, toughness, and a dynamic shooting ability. I love her passion, and most importantly, who she is as a woman. She'll make us better on and off the court. So, when it comes to Jazzy Gibson, she's more so as a post player, bring lockdown defense. This is from the Arizona press release, and her ability to knock down shots from outside. So could be an instant impact type player there in Jazzy Gibson, but that's kind of where she's worked really, really quickly, adding 8 new faces. I mean, before the weekend really was, or the week's really gotten going here. She got, I think the news broke Friday or Saturday night that she was getting the job. Again, she's taken Arizona to a national championship game. And on paper, I mean, she is the most decorated SMU women's basketball coach to get hired. So however it works out, it's going to be one of kind of the defining early moments here for Damon Evans as he made this hire. And you know, as a program, after kind of the embarrassment of a couple of those games for SMU this fall and into the spring as well for ACC play, they really need to get on track. And it seems like to me at minimum SMU should be a very competitive team, a team that can, you know, represent the school and not kind of have those embarrassing moments. And then if you like the resources and you like the things in place, you would think Adia Barnes can really go get it here for SMU and try to make some waves in the ACC. So quick change there for Adia Barnes getting the job and then jumping all over the portal and high school ranks to add 8 new faces to the roster. And truthfully, just with how bad the women's team was this year, didn't pay too much attention to the roster and kind of where it's at leaving this season. But with so much time left in the transfer portal, I'm sure there's going to be more changes. So keep it locked on the ponyexpress.com. We will follow it all for you guys as best we can. And Talia Goodman is a really good national resource for you guys. She's on our On3 team and did a great job. She broke the news. She's broken all the transfer commits. So Talia's done an awesome job for us at On3 covering the women's basketball side of things and NIL and the transfer portal. So make sure you give her a follow as well. As we close out here, do also want to remind you guys about Rusty Taco. Rusty Taco, make sure you get those free corn fritters, guys, over at the Greenville Avenue location. You can type in Pony Express for online orders at the Greenville Avenue location only, or you go in there and you say, hey, I would like free corn fritters on the Pony Express, sent me, and they will toss them in there for you for your meal. Make sure you try the margarita. The weather's going to be perfect for the Masters this weekend. Maybe sit out on the patio and then go somewhere, your favorite watering hole, and watch the Masters. But fuel up at Rusty Taco and support them because they support us at ontheponyexpress.com. And of course, everybody who's been to SMU knows you've got to enjoy Rusty Taco every now and again. So appreciate them as well. But let's wrap up here. SMU basketball does get back out onto the road here. They're allowed to be back on the road, and the dead period ends April 10th. So I believe April 11th, they'll be allowed to get out and go or host people. And right now, you know, SMU basketball, they only have Nana Awosu Anane. But what I can tell you is this is the new era of I think where NIL collectives are at right now. Everybody knows that the price of admission for competitive basketball teams and high level of play has gone up. And no sport does it more wildly and I think more Wild Westy than college basketball. I mean, the college football side of things, I think we've seen a lot of programs get wiser, and I'm not saying everybody's perfect in this regard, but they've figured out the ROI of spending, and college basketball I just don't think has done it yet. everybody talks about Coleman Hawkins, Kansas State, SMU was in on him, ends up getting $2 million. Kansas State misses the tournament, I'm pretty sure. And certainly didn't get the ROI on that deal. I mean, there's no way. Let's see. Like Kansas State in terms of, yeah, they lost Baylor in the Big 12 tournament, and that's when Coleman Hawkins went viral for crying. But college basketball has not learned the ROI side of this. I mean, that's very little people can debate on that front. And where SMU is at with it, I would say, is they are doing an extraordinary job of retaining and keeping those players that they want to. And we've already seen BJ Edwards announce he's back. He set the all-time single season record for steals, which is a huge deal for SMU. So congrats to BJ for doing that. But you also have a team that finished tied for fourth in the ACC. And Andy Enfield will tell you he's a builder. He's not somebody that wants to do this every year. I mean, truthfully, he really doesn't. And so when you look at what they've put together overall, you've got to feel pretty strongly about, okay, if you've already got BJ Edwards done, everybody thought Boopy Miller was out bouncing, all those things immediately. Well, guess what? We haven't seen that happen. And Samet Yigitolo's still with the team. And all of those guys, from what I hear, are on the verge of being, formally back. And if you've been on the ponyexpress.com, you know that. And so what they need to do still is they need to add 2 to 3 really quality players. And that's what they're trying to do. But the first thing they have to do is they have to get those final pieces kind of locked in here. Boopy and Samet. I think they're going to do that. I think, it's transfer portal. It's wild. We've got, 2 more weeks, two more full weeks of entering and all of that for the portal. But what SMU has is they've got a robust collective that is spending and willing to spend and retain. And the smart college basketball teams are trying to retain their players. Unless you're a really just, a bad fit, bad culture fit, or you're jumping up from, a mid-major to a high major to get your big payday, and those mid-majors, just aren't going to keep them. You've got to be in a position where you can build these teams. Like that's the key. You're seeing it a little bit where you need just a little bit of consistency. And that's what Andy Enfield wants. He's a builder. He's not somebody that wants to blow up the roster every year and do this and go through the portal and be in all these. And it's make or break if you get the guys you go after or not. So SMU is in a good situation. They've added a piece in Nana. They really like the freshmen. They've done well from what we've seen from these freshmen in these national tournaments. Guys like Jermaine O'Neal Jr., Jaden Toombs, Nigel Walls, I saw got some love on Twitter recently. So you're in a good situation. You just got to get it across the finish line here with retaining these players. And then I still think they have some big fish out there that they're going after, and then they'll assess from there. We'll have a real good idea, I think, after this weekend. I'm not saying they're going to get a commit. I'm not saying some of their top targets are even going to decide, but I think that's when we'll start to hear a little bit more of, okay, things are going in the really, really right direction here, and SMU is rolling, about to get rolling, or they'll have to hit the reset here a little bit and go from there. So we will track it all at ontheponyexpress.com, but I can tell you they are working it on the SMU basketball side of things. So just stay tuned, and if something changes, I will be sure to let you guys know. But I think some big things are coming down the pipeline. So we will be tracking it all at ontheponyexpress.com. Make sure you're there for just $1 for your first week. We've got spring ball. We've got all of that. Join us, please. It's a great time on the message board, so be sure to do that. Shout out Northwest Insurance Agency. Email Mark Villasana, info@nwagencies.com. Support them, and we will catch you guys next time on another edition.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on 3 and on Instagram at on3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.